miniature soldiers, big opinions. This is the Conclave Podcast. Welcome back to the Conclave Podcast. This evening you've got me, Adam, the legal department. I'm here with our friend Rezza. Say hi.
Hello.
And of course, Ed, the Sandman, who's here joining us as well. Ed, say
hello.
hi. And today we are going to be talking about the big news of the day in the 40K community, which is of course the release of the new codexes. Specifically tonight we're going to be talking about the Space Marines, mainly because we're all Marine players in one form or another, and also because I think it's seen some of the big changes from the previous, obviously very powerful Codex. So, guys, how are we feeling about the new Codex overall?
Positive, I think.
Yeah, I really like it. There's actually not many things I don't like about it, to be honest.
That's always a good start, I think. Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's looking good. I think it does what the Space Marine Codex needed to do, which was keep Space Marines feeling like Space Marines, which might sound a bit weird to probably to people who are new to the hobby, but I think you guys will agree. Obviously, you look at the background and the fluff. You know, these are the superhuman warriors of the Imperium. And they're just sort of meant to go forth and absolutely destroy everything they come across, which obviously we can't have on the tabletop, but they certainly should feel powerful. But I think a lot of people feel that the 8th edition Codex went a little bit too far and made them a little bit overpowered, to say the least. I mean, what do you guys feel about that?
It comes across like a bit of a rebalancing of the army. They still feel elite and like the guys that turn up to get the job done. But they don't feel like you're going to come to a game and the game's kind of got a result before you've played it out. What do you think, Ed?
Yeah, no, hit the nail on the head, I think, there.
So I think, you know, we've had and just to do a bit of background here, I guess we've had a period where we've seen issues with Marines getting endless rerolls. We've seen a lot of very, very good, very, very cheap stratagems. I think that people have been using, and obviously, I mean, I don't think I've ever come across this personally, but there are, you know, people in the community who talk about, I don't want to play Space Marines, and no one should ever feel like that, you know, especially if you're a new player. These are the real poster boys of the hobby. I mean, I think as Rich said in our previous episode, you think 40k, you think of Space Marines. So it's a bit bad that, you know, new players getting into the hobby might pick up Space Marines just because they are the poster boys, and then immediately get told, oh, I don't want to play you because you are so powerful, you know, even for a new player. So I think, yeah, really good rebalancing overall. So what we're going to talk about tonight, as well as just generally about our feelings around the Space Marine Codex and sort of key changes that we found, is picking a sort of a favourite thing and a least favourite thing, I think, from the Codex. So we've all been today busily reading what sort of some of the key commentators from the community have said, and looking at what's been revealed as people have got hold of the book, and unfortunately we're not cool enough or not famous enough yet for GW to send us the books, but you know, Ed's been on the phone to them today and sort of telling them we should.
It was lost
in
in the post. It was lost in the post.
So we haven't got them in our hands just yet, but this is based on very much our sort of reading of some of the key commentators out there in the community who've looked at this. So to kick us off, I think let's go for Ed. What's your favourite and least favourite thing in the Codex?
Yeah, I think I'm going to start off with the big one. I'll expand it just a little bit because it's quite big, but I'm going to say auras in general. So we've had a bunch of changes to auras in the Space Marine Codex. So one is the changes to where things have got core. So primarily, this is going to affect litanies, and it's going to affect rites of battle, and any kind of aura like that in that respect. Interestingly, with Space Marines, and one of the big differences between the Space Marine and the Necron Codex is that the number of Space Marine core units is really big, and I believe there's only 4 in the Necron Codex. So that's a huge change, and I think everybody is loving it. It gives you, we talked about it in the last podcast actually. Funnily enough, it doesn't solve a lot of the problem with Ravenwing particularly, but there are going to be lots of units now where you can actually just deploy them on the edge, and you don't need to castle up. The second one is obviously going to be the Chapter Master. So yeah, this is a fantastic change. The fact that you now designate the model, it's still so good. I think that's the main thing you can take away from this. People are still going to take it all the time, especially if you've got one incredibly powerful unit. And so that's going to absolutely stay in the game. And the third one I just wanted to mention, actually, even though it's a little bit more niche, but was Master of Machines. This was the Warlord trait for
Master of the Forge.
Marine. Yeah, Master of the Forge, and it added +1 to hit for all vehicles. It was just super obnoxious. It was actually one of those things that didn't come up that much because Chapter Master was so good, and there were so many obnoxious things in the Space Marine book, but it was just a ridiculous aura to have, an aura of +1 to hit. But the hilarious thing about it was they released Feros, and he had +1 to hit to things nearby to start with, and then they went, oh no, that's terrible, we've got to nerf that. And then they gave it to another unit like a month later. That was a weird one.
Good joined up thinking there from G-Dubs.
Absolutely. So yeah, the three major changes to auras there. So yeah, the changes for core, the Chapter Master changing, and Chapter Master isn't just core, I should say as well. That can be any particular unit, and the third is Master of Machines.
Yeah, and I think just to jump in, just to say thank you whoever wrote this codex for toning down Chapter Master, because I think for all of us as players, and you know, I mean, guys, feel free to jump in, but I feel like the endless rerolls and the massive efficiency that it gave to Space Marine armies is just a bit obnoxious. It was just a bit over the top.
Yeah, it was stupid.
As a new player, re-rolling a repulsed execution of a Chapter Master nearby probably took you 25 minutes.
Yeah, it was absolutely wrong. And you know, likewise, you know, just to mention, Master Artisans also got nerfed. Again, very necessary. You can tell it was necessary because people were always taking Master Artisan. I think one thing to interesting to mention was that I did see a little bit of blowback online because people were like, oh well, you know, if you look at the last few tournaments, Chapter Master didn't come up too much. Terrible statistic, because obviously there haven't been major tournaments, so we can't see what the top tables are like. But what GW have seen is the prevalence of Chapter Master in the game. That's the problem. When everybody is taking it all the time, that is a problem, because that means that for your average Joe playing Warhammer, he's constantly facing Chapter Master. So it has to be a better rule. And that's what they fixed here. So yeah, again, well done.
Absolutely, and I think you're right in the things that have changed, and we're not going to go into every single change in the Codex tonight because we'll be here forever, and I don't think anyone wants to listen to us drone on for quite that long. But I think the things that have changed are the things that were super prevalent. So as you say, the change to Master Artisans. There's also been a slight change to the long range marksman successor tactic that you could take, and the stealthy tactics. So there are changes to the really commonly used stuff, which actually are probably just really good for the game overall.
Yeah, well, successors just traits as a whole kind of, I'd say, it got a bit weaker, which would probably encourage players more to take a direct inheritors traits, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I would like to see a little bit more support for successor chapters, actually, because I found that generally I was seeing a Founding Legion and in 8th and 9th edition. So yeah, I really missed that kind of, you know, my guy side of Warhammer, and I say that playing a Founding Legion myself, but I would like it to be encouraged in the community more generally.
It's a bit biased here.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a nice thing about the three of us doing this, is all three of us play Space Marines, but we also all play or are interested in playing other armies, so we do actually just want the game to be balanced, and obviously we also want our armies to be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing, as I say, there's nothing worse than, you know, the feel bads, right? When you go up and you play somebody who's put their, you know, heart and soul into an army, It looks really cool. It's really well painted. They've got some really good like fluff narrative behind it. And then you sit there and you go, "Oh, that's nice. Now my Repulsor Executioner is going to re-roll all of his big guns and kill all of your units before you can do anything." And no one wants that.
Yeah, yeah.
A bit of a bitter taste, right?
So Ed, what was your least favourite thing you think from the Codex?
My least favorite thing is that deployable mines are gone, and I really like that from the Incursors. I just thought it was really cool. It's actually hilariously like in the rules that you deploy it as like a marker, but there's really no reason to ever build that model now, unfortunately. But really, I think. The other big one, I suspect it will be FAQ. I think that's also something, we should also mention. Always wait for the FAQ guys before you abuse things. But the ATV being able to be revived by the Apothecary is probably a bit much.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it's probably worth mentioning the Chief Apothecary just generally. The Chief Apothecary is so much better than the normal Apothecary. It's not as bad as Chapter Master was, but it's that same kind of thing where it's like
I think it's going to be in
you will
most
probably
armies.
never not take it,
Yeah.
because it's just, I mean, very thankfully it no longer stacks with the Iron Hands, but everybody, if you take an Apothecary, you're going to take one of him, because you just get so much for those extra points.
Definitely. Okay, and let's go on to Rich. And what was your least favourite from this Codex?
So I'll go with my favourite first. I've always been a fan of this model, and it's always been terrible on the tabletop, but I think they look amazing. So the changes to Reavers, specifically with the stratagem they've been given. Now, I just think it's really cool that the GW have just kind of addressed that they kind of didn't really do a lot. It's called Terror Troop, so it gives Reavers an aura that turns off OBSEC for any units within 3 inches of it, and causes actions to automatically fail if the Reavers come within 3 inches of an enemy performing one. I just think that's awesome. It kind of really fits in with their fluff of being like, their face mask being skulls that terrify the enemy. I just think that's a really awesome change. I think that for me, I know it's needed. A big FAQ is going to be needed, but I dislike that there's going to be a lot of clutter and more documents to look through with this change. I know it's a bit of a nitpick, really, and it's needed by the game, but it's too complicated for my tiny brain.
Yeah, I also agree with the Reavers. That's definitely a really great one that GW clearly looked out for, because, as lots of people rightly pointed out, the Assault Intercessor can't make them a largely redundant, and they also got an extra AP on their bolt pistol now. Their AP -2. That's really cool. I think the really cool thing actually about that strat is it's definitely one of those things, and I don't know if you guys do the same. Sometimes you see a rule in a new book and you go, that is the kind of thing I might not use, but there's going to be some top tier player that uses that in a list we're going to see in like 3 months' time. I bet that's the kind of thing that's going to come up, and a lot of people will just not do it. It also is usable on the Phobos Lieutenant, because the Phobos Lieutenant got split up, so that there's now a Reaver version and a non-Reaver version, so you can actually still use that on the one with the Reaver keyword. So maybe that one will see more play. I definitely think it's probably worthwhile if you've got those extra points, maybe spending that and upgrading a Lieutenant to him.
Or White Scarf list, and it's really swinging. It could get you 5 to 10 points if it's done right. Yeah.
So that's really cool. I think I'll leave Adam's comment on the Reavers, because I do have other things to say on the kind of the like as Rich says, the ease of access for Space Marine rules now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the Reavers thing is a really good pick, actually. They are a cool model. Obviously, they've been kind of meh, shall we say, pretty much since their release, and obviously with the Assault Intercessors coming out, as Ed says, they were a little bit questionable, but with the new strats that are available to them, with what they can do, hopefully they'll see more play, because as you say, they're really cool looking models, they do something interesting, and fundamentally, it's cliche as hell, but variety is a spice of life, right? And it's nice to see some potential for Marine Army builds that aren't all sort of just the same. I mean, I think Marines are an army which has a massive variety to pick from. And I do think that, depending on
Yeah.
the flavor, yeah, I mean that's putting it mildly, right? But you had your, depending on your flavor of chapter, successor chapter, there were just certain builds that you always saw, and the same units appearing again and again, because there were just some things, or actually, to put that another way, there were units that never appeared. Is probably the better way of putting it,
Yeah.
because they just didn't do anything useful in any way, which is always going to be the case in any codex. But actually, it seems to me that where they're making the changes here, it means that you are potentially going to see little plays that you can do where, yeah, they'll start appearing. So that can only be a good thing, really. Do we want to talk about Rich's least favorite a little bit more, Ed?
Yeah, so I mean, there was there were some things that were missed in the codex. I think these things are like to be FAQ'd. I don't think GW are going to tell everybody you must buy Faith and Fury just to get access to your one chapter specific rule for chaplains, the litany. So I'm going to guess that was just missed in the book. I would assume that gets FAQ. GW have missed things before, and then they just put it in a PDF. I really hope those haven't been removed from the game, because actually they were really powerful and offered some really interesting options. Like, in fact, most of the chapters had really powerful litanies. So that's something that was missed. I think also for Dark Angels, it's a particular worry right now. I'm not going to go too far into it, because obviously we haven't seen the rules. But it definitely seems to me there's no clear way forward for this, and it's certainly not going to be easy. GW can, because there are so many important strats in the Dark Angels Codex, not in Rich of the Damned, and there are so many obviously chapter specific units. It seems like GW are going to have to make a PDF or something and literally list the things you can pick out of there. And like, when I say that, it will be like, you can use this page and this page, but not this page. You can use this strat and this strat, but not this strat. And that's actually going to be a little bit, that's going to be a lot of bookkeeping for Dark Angels players, and that's not. And whereas for Blood Angels and Space Wolves, hopefully this shouldn't be too long, because their books are coming. For Dark Angels, we don't know when that book is coming. Like when we look at like the Sisters Codex and the Gene Silicate Codex of 8th edition, things get pushed back a lot. There's already a really slow release of books coming out in this year. The fact that we're only going to get one more proper codex,
Yeah, Death Guard
in 2019, is really, that's a really slow pace. So it could be a seriously long time before Dark Angels actually get their rules, and that is concerning. I won't lie.
Just to also say, it's 2020. We've not got back in time. Don't worry, you're not listening
We're
to.
still in that really bad year.
Yeah, it's just, I think.
No, we got the leaks really early, so we actually made this.
Yeah, I think what we've decided to do is blot out Nurgle's Rock 2020 from our minds.
I've only had 10 months to adjust to the new year. So but give me a couple more, and
yeah, no. So I guess that comes around to me and my sort of favourites. I guess my favourite thing, what I was going to say, and we spoke about this before we started recording this podcast, and I sort of said about Dreadnoughts getting the -1 to damage sort of built in, so effectively getting the serpent shield from Wave Serpents. But I feel like I'm picking on Eldar a little bit there, because I'm sort of saying you're no longer special, guys, unlucky, which is probably a bit harsh, given that a couple of our friends are really big Eldar players. So although that is one of my favourite things, I will amend it slightly. What I really like is the changes to the stratagems. So some of the changes to the stratagems, I'll give you some examples, I think are just quite sort of flavoursome and take the edge off some of the crazier abilities. So a good example is the Honour the Chapter stratagem. So the sort of the refight stratagem that's available to Space Marines, that now only works on Assault Intercessors. So again, that's a really good reason to bring Assault Intercessors along, right? And rather than giving Smash Captains the ability to fight again, which is nice and flavourful, and also again just removes some of that over the top power. And the other example is like Transhuman Physiology. So Transhuman Physiology now only works on Primaris models, which obviously is still a very big range, but this does remove it from units like Wolfen in the Space Wolves, and sorry, I'm going to upset Rich here, but Sanguinary Guard in the Blood
When you
Angels.
mentioned that, I was like, why do you like that change? I don't know what's going to happen. So hopefully we get something in the next month.
Yeah. I mean, I think the specialist units in those chapters will get their own strats, but yeah, having that limited to certain units, because transhuman was always just a really good, it's an incredibly powerful stratagem, and with the amount of command points you get now, having that just available to everything is just a little bit too, again, it's one of these things where it just tips things over the edge a bit, and by adjusting it, but not just getting rid of it wholesale, you still make it usable, but you just take the edge off a little bit. So it's not on the really. I mean, there's an argument to say, of course, that it's still going to be a problem on something like heavy intercessors, which are coming our way, because obviously they're still very strong. But
yeah, with that big 5-man squad of Blade Guard.
Yeah, or the big squad of Blade Guard. But again, it just makes it a little bit more specific. In terms of my least favourite thing, this was actually quite difficult, because I've got to admit I do quite like all of the changes, or most of the changes they've put through in this. I guess one of them is the fact that characters like the captain and the lieutenant, who I would sort of call core units, don't benefit from the changes to the auras. I think I agree with Ed overall that the changes to the auras are absolutely the right thing to do, because again, as we say, we're making the joke later times here, but re-rolling on a repulsor executioner is just nuts. But at the same time, I don't see why a captain's pretty core to a Space Marine army. I don't see why they shouldn't just get the re-roll. I don't think that's game breaking either. I mean, you guys may disagree.
No, well, I'm going to disagree, because I think it'll be really interesting. But one of the reasons I disagree is I do like that change, and like I say, I play Space Marine, so I'm not biased here. But I just find them way too consistent. To be honest, they're just a bit boring. Like the fact that your chapter master never misses because he hits on 2s and reroll 1s, it's just a bit dull. Anything that does that in the game is just a bit boring to me. And as much as I like the kind of the competitive side, and kind of reducing variability, I don't think it should be as absolute as that. And I actually find, so I actually quite like that that's kind of gone. And also I think the other thing is when you start re-rolling everything, when you start just the core units shouldn't be too many, because it just takes time to keep re-rolling. That's one of my biggest gripes with things like we haven't mentioned aggressors getting enough, but like things like aggressors from before, was that it just took too long. And when it came to things like chapter masters, you got to re-roll his bolt pistol now. You got to it just takes so much time. So I think in terms of how much time you'll save in games is actually not insignificant.
Yeah, no, I take that. I think that's a completely fair thing to say. So yeah, no, I mean, look, I think it's going to be one of these things where we, as we said, we have to see how it plays. We have to see what the sort of the next set of FAQs, etc. is, and just see how it all works. I think it's definitely going to lead to changes to the way people build their armies. And again, as we said earlier, talking about Reavers, that can only be a good thing.
Yeah,
for sure. I'm going to look forward to playing different. Against different armies now. It's going to be. I feel like it will add more flavour to different Marines you went to see, because Iron Hands and Ultramarines list back a few months ago were quite. I would have thought would have looked quite similar. So now there might be, hopefully, be really different.
Yeah, Contemptor Dreadnoughts can now be characters for Iron Hands. That's a super interesting one. I found like a lot of the explosions for Iron Hands got a lot better, I think. That was actually something I was really glad to see in this book, which was GW toning down the damage from explosions. I don't know if you guys saw this. So Invictors were probably the biggest one, where it just made Victors heinous, like randomly. I think everybody can agree that the explosions in Ninth are so fun.
Yeah.
But the fact that like it's just not fun when it's okay, and you've rolled that 6. Okay, so now I lose 300 points of stuff. That's not fun. Like, I think it's something you should have to think about and play around, but when it's D3 damage, it's so much more manageable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you've got the super explosions, I think should be reserved for super heavy stuff. So Bane Blades, I don't know, like a Necron Monolith. What's the Space Marine, the Astrea, super heavy. I've seen a battle report where one of those blows up, and it's extremely amusing. I don't think for the guy playing the Space Marines it's very funny, but for everybody else, it's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, one thing I know we've all mentioned, and I know you were talking about this earlier, Rich, that I don't think we've talked about yet, and there's definitely been a lot of talk about it online, is Eradicators. How are you feeling about those, Rich?
Yeah. Well, they need to be addressed. They've obviously taken away the advancing and still being able to use the total obliteration, I think it's called. But the points are still
How are they going to survive?
Yeah, yeah, I know, right? But the points are still exactly the same, and they're the best unit in the game. They're just so powerful. You bring them on from reserve and they're just going to delete a unit. So yeah, I was surprised they didn't get an alteration.
Yeah, I'm surprised the points didn't go up. But I saw a comment today which was a little bit salty, but I do fundamentally agree with it. Where someone said, well, you know, they've changed aggressors to make sure they're not like necessarily the auto take that they were in quite a lot of Space Marine armies. You know, to the point you guys made earlier about getting rid of the rerolls taking up time, as Ed said. But what they've now done is they've just made Eradicators the alternative. There's very few situations where you're not going to take an Eradicator unit. So yeah, I do wonder whether they might FAQ that.
I would say, actually, on that particular note, and I don't know whether this is just me, from my experience of 40k, I hated aggressors more than I hated eradicators. So given the choice of the two, I am glad they went in the way they did. Aggressors were just, they were just amazing. I was quite, I saw a couple of comments like you said, Adam, where people were unhappy with it change to aggressors. But honestly, like I say, I play Dark Angels, and aggressors were best as Dark Angel because of Alice Need, the plus one to hit, the 4-up invuln. They were so good as Dark Angels, but they were just ridiculous. They were absolutely ridiculous for their points and the fact they were great in combat. I'm so glad they're done. And
I always like. I never had a problem. I like them. I use them as Ultramarines, double shooting all the time. It's brilliant. But yeah, I can see why people wouldn't like it. But just saying those words aloud.
Yeah, no. Go on, Ed.
No, I was just going to say, I did see a funny comment online, though, about the Eradicators. I do agree fundamentally. I think Eradicators are too cheap. They still don't seem to have understood the idea that forcing a melter unit not to split fire is not really a particularly great cost. Like, I've played a lot of with melter a lot in my life. I don't think I have ever split fire with melter guns. You need to point for 2 shots, non-shot weapon. They need to, and I better see a funny comment which was like, the great thing about Eradicators is they really show how GW have balanced the game, because if you take a Gallant versus them, a Gallant will on average kill 1 Eradicator, but likewise the Eradicators will on average kill 1 Gallant.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah. No, so hopefully
if you roll perfectly you could do 10 on 1 melter, right? Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I've had a game where I think I had a Rhino that I just positioned it quite badly, and it got shot by some Eradicators, and I'm pretty sure it took something like 28 damage was what it took. It wasn't going to survive that in any universe. But yeah, so I think we're just heading towards time now, because we wanted to keep this one relatively brief. So I think let's round off on one final thought on the thing. We've obviously said favourites and sort of least favourite thing, but what is it that you guys are most looking forward to trying in the new Codex? And that can be a new unit, one of the strat changes, or even, I mean, I guess Ed may bring up the Dark Angels when they eventually come out. But what are you guys looking forward most to trying? Rich?
So as a Blood Angel player, we've got access to new Warlord traits, and psychic powers. So I'm looking forward to chucking the Imperium Sword on a captain of some description, and then chucking Might of Heroes on them, and then with the Codex coming out, maybe just stacking loads of attacks by giving them the Black Rage. That could be absolutely insanity, and it could be fun.
And Ed?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Dark Angels. Funnily enough,
How did I know?
so the thing I'm most excited about in Ninth Edition Space Marine Whites is Terminators. We've heard quite a bit from like playtesters and stuff that this is arguably an addition for Terminators, and people jump to Scarab Occult, and people jump to Blightlord, quite rightly. But also, if it's an addition for Terminators, I gotta tell you, that is a hell of an addition for Dark Angel, because Deathwing you never used to really see, but they are some of the most buffable units in the game. They have so many powerful stratagems and warlord traits and abilities that I'm very, very excited now that they're 3 wounds.
Nice. And I guess for me, as I say, to go back to my point earlier about Dreadnoughts, I want Dreadnought meta to be a thing. And not just your big, new, shiny Redemptor Dreadnoughts. I want your old, box with legs, ironclad nonsense, waddling its way up the field, laughing in the face of your multi-damage weapons, because I just think that will be quite funny and ridiculous. So let's call it there. We have been the Conclave. Thank you very much for listening and downloading. You can catch us at our Instagrams. So I am at ADR Wargaming.
I'm at Rezza Prime.
I'm at the Sandman Hobby.
Okay, thanks guys, and have a great rest of the weekend to everybody listening.